I'm Babs, and I work for the Warwick International Foundation Programme, which is part of the University of Warwick, and I'm the recruitment officer. In today's session, I'm just going to explain a little bit more to you about, British culture, and then also look at student life. And while for student life, I'll be focusing on examples, at the University of Warwick, it'll still give you an idea of what you expect at any university in the United Kingdom. So first things first is I will actually ask you 2 questions, and you can write these in the chat box. That will actually be the easiest for you. So can anyone tell me how many countries make up the United Kingdom? So you can just write the number in the chat box quickly. So I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. And then question 2 is, what's the difference between the United Kingdom and Great Britain? Don't worry, it's not a trick question. I'm just trying to see the level of knowledge we have on the call. So you can just type in the number of how many countries make up the United Kingdom, and then what's the difference, if you know at all, between the United Kingdom and Great Britain. So I'm not seeing anyone type it in the chat box, but it would be beneficial if you can, or if someone did, it wasn't in English. So I'll just give you a minute. 3 countries, yep. Anyone else? Any idea of how many countries make up the United Kingdom at all? I'll just wait for one more answer and then I'll go ahead. So, and you can guess as many countries as any number you like. Anyone? Don't worry, like I said, it's not a trick question. 4? Okay, perfect. So I will start. So actually 4 is correct. So if you weren't already aware, when people talk about the UK, the United Kingdom, they're actually talking about 4 countries. So that's the same thing when you're considering studying in the UK. You're considering studying in 4 countries, not just one. And when we also talk about Great Britain, that's actually only Scotland, England, and Wales, which are connected together. Northern Ireland is not included. Northern Ireland is connected to Ireland, so it's important you also know that those 2 places are different. So if you ever see anything saying study Ireland, that's speaking about Ireland specifically, not Northern Ireland. And one of the things that also comes with these different countries is that you're going to have different aspects of British culture. So British culture is actually quite complex because you're putting the culture and histories of 4 countries together. So when you're watching TV and you're being told this is British, actually sometimes it's more English, or it's more Scottish, or it's more Welsh, or it's more Northern Irish. So we actually all have 4 different flags. So England have their own flag, Wales have their own flag, Scotland have their own flag, and Northern Ireland also have their own flag. And then when we're all together, we use the Union Jack flag, which is obviously the flag you predominantly see around, which is that red, white, and blue flag that we have. And another thing as well is that your life in the UK would vary depending on which country you live, because in each country, we all speak English. So there's around 65 million people that make up the United Kingdom. And of that 65 million, 98% speak English. But in other countries, such as Wales, you also have Welsh, which is spoken and it's written. So if you're driving around Wales, you'd see signs in 2 languages, which is something that some students aren't prepared for and they get confused about. And even the names of towns and cities will be in Welsh, which makes it a little bit more complicated if you haven't prepared yourself about that idea. Same with Scotland. So in Scotland, they actually speak Gaelic along with Scottish and English, obviously. So every of these countries do speak English. And then you've also got another Gaelic, which is spoken in Northern Ireland as well. So that's something just to be aware of, that you would have differences even when you pop up in the cities. We also have our own different capitals. I'm sure all of you have heard of London. London is the capital when it comes to England, but not the capital for the United Kingdom. So always be aware, because the United Kingdom is actually not a country, it's 4 countries together. Wales capital is Cardiff, and the capital of Scotland is Edinburgh, and then the capital of Northern Ireland is Belfast. I'm sure again you've heard of some of these universities, such as the University of Cardiff or the University of Edinburgh, they're relating to the capital cities. And each of these countries obviously has a number of institutions in, and we also have our own cultures. And like I said, we have our own areas that we fit into. But when you're really looking at British culture, you can kind of divide us into 5 categories. The most important thing to us as British people is our food, our sports, our music, our history, and then cinema and films, TV. Like, that's really something that's integral in what we have. So when it comes to a food area, I know that you and the team have visited the UK, and they said there was a lot of potatoes when it comes to our food, and most foreigners would consider our food slightly bland. It's not as spicy and flavorful. We do take a lot of flavors from other countries. So when you go to London, for example, you will be able to find food from every country in the world. We're very open to that. And each country also has its own national dishes that you'd have. So what you're looking at here, where you can see my cursor, is something called haggis. That's actually the national dish of Scotland, and that's made from using the inside of a sheep's stomach, and then they kind of fill it up with meat and spices, and that's eaten in Scotland. And then you've seen these little cakes here in the corner. Those are actually Welsh cakes, and those are a national dish in Wales. For most English people, you would say fish and chips, but it's actually universal throughout the UK. At the same time, if not, it's an English fry up. And what you're actually seeing here, though you'd think it's an English breakfast, it's not. It's an Ulster breakfast, which is from Northern Ireland. So they have their own version of an English breakfast, which is famous for them and considered a traditional dish. And then every country would have what you're seeing here, which we'd call a Sunday roast. So it's a traditional thing in our culture on a Sunday to either be sitting at home with your family and you eat what we call a roast dinner, or you'd be going out to different pubs and restaurants to have that. But it's all about family. Sunday is time that was typically spent with family because we used to be quite a Christian country as a whole, and then that has slowly died down, but we still keep those values of keeping the family together. And then when you're looking more at British culture, you then start also to look at sports, like I said. So again, you may not recognize some of the instruments you're seeing, but then others you do. So football is huge within the United Kingdom. If you're not already aware, it's something that if you want to get yourself into conversation with people, especially if you want to start integrating into society, brushing up a little bit on your football knowledge is beneficial, as that's a really big way that we like to socialize as different communities. The whole country come together. So Wales will all come together, England will come together, same with Scotland and Northern Ireland. When it comes to stuff like the World Cup or Euro, the countries are more divided. So next year, 2022, anyone who joins a university in September, the World Cup will be in November. And the UK itself will get very into it. And you'd almost be seeing it and hearing about it everywhere you go. So that's just something to be aware of and just get an idea. And also next year, there's also the Rugby World Cup. And rugby is a big sport within all countries, but predominantly in Wales and Scotland, and same with Northern Ireland. And what you're also seeing there, those are hurling sticks. So hurling is one of the national sports within Northern Ireland, and it's also a national sport in Ireland. It's quite a complex sport because you're allowed to hit the ball with the stick, and you also have a football that's involved, and there's running and kicking. It's very complex. But if you study in Northern Ireland, that would be something that you would have to be aware of, as culturally, that's what everyone would be watching and talking about. So one of the main things I'd say when you're exploring our culture is that you look into the sports areas, as they give you a good idea of how to integrate once you join university student life. Being aware of the type of food we eat is also really important, as it helps you know how you're potentially going to survive once you transition into student life. But like I said, everything is always available. And then music wise, I've put in pictures of some of the most famous artists we have. One is Ed Sheeran, one is Adele, but I've also put in the Beatles. So we have a variety of music, and that's also a really good way for students to be able to interact with each other. And our music goes back over years and years. So whatever genre of music you like, you would be able to find someone. And music is quite important because you have a lot of concerts, a lot of bands, and a big part of our culture is just like we go to sporting events, we also love to go to music events. We have a lot of festivals. Glastonbury Festival would be an example. So every summer there are hundreds of festivals going on throughout the United Kingdom. And that's something that students and people really get into. And it's just a normal part of life for us at this point. And then we've also got history. So I've got one, which is Shakespeare, which also just leads on to, we have a rich history and an old history. So not just in terms of literature, but also in terms of cities as well. So I've got a picture of Edinburgh Castle. So if you're not aware, we have thousands upon thousands of castles in the United Kingdom as a whole. Those all have a deep history relating towards the different monarchies we've had. So what you're seeing is a picture of our current monarchy. So if you're not aware, we do have a queen who is essentially in power, but she doesn't really hold any actual power rights. And we have a royal family who essentially live around the UK, but the Queen lives in Buckingham Palace alongside her other residences. And these are things that are quite big for our culture because, again, in 2022, she's having a jubilee, which means the country's going to be celebrating how long she's been in power. And it's something that we've always done. So we always celebrate her birthday. The reason we have time off work sometimes are celebrations in relation to the history that we have. So being aware of these things really does help you understand how complex the British culture is, because while these pictures all look, mashed up together, it does give you an idea of just how complex it is living in the UK and just exploring our culture a little bit. And then, as we're saying, films, we have a number of films such as Harry Potter, which I'm sure some of you guys have loved and watched or read the books. Same with a Christmas one I put up, there's Love Actually, which is on TV every Christmas. I think one of the things with British culture is it's quite predictable in the sense that we do the same things at the same time of year every year. So if you were to come and study in the United Kingdom, whichever country it is that you study in, you would find that from your foundation or from your undergraduate first year all the time and all the way until maybe you finish a master's or a PhD, you would be experiencing the exact same things at the exact same time of year each year. It's just something that we tend to do here. And I'm sure you also have the same traditions in your home country. I kind of gave you guys an idea of British culture in this way because it's just the easiest starting point. I think students sometimes get worried about, interacting with people and how to socialize. But if you start to just look at the fundamentals of music, sports, history, and film, you will have things that will give you an idea of who British people are. And it will also give you topics for conversation. And you also will be able to share your versions or your equivalencies of the same things. They're the easiest and the smartest starting point. And just so you don't get a culture shock, we always recommend looking at the food that's eaten here. I'm sure you've got international restaurants which can provide you with a Sunday roast, for example, or fish and chips. I myself used to live in Asia, and I was able to find Irish pubs which would serve English food. So if I missed home, I would find a place that I could eat it. So if you ever want to challenge yourself before potentially coming to the UK, that's something you can also do too. But this is just a little bit of a mashup of what we have and what to kind of expect and where to start going on further. And it's the same, as I said, throughout all the 4 countries. So if you study in England, you'll be experiencing similar aspects as what a student studying in Wales would have, what a student studies in Scotland would have, and what a student studied in Northern Ireland would have. I myself have actually lived in 3 of the countries. So I've lived in Great Britain. So I've lived in Wales, England and Scotland and attended university in all three of those countries. So I will tell you that it really is pretty much the same, but it's just worth giving you just a general idea. So you kind of got a little bit of an introduction into culture, and now I'll just give you an introduction into student life and how you can go and do your own research and look and think about what type of student life you want for yourself, like what's fundamentally important for you. That's what I will do. And then at the same time, I'll be using the university I work for as an example, but then you can go and look at other universities and explore. So what you're seeing is in the UK, you have two types of universities. And this again is the same in all of the countries. You have campus universities or city-based universities. A campus university is going to be one which is usually on the edge of a city, and it's its own little bubble. And then a city-based university is mingled around the town that it's or city that it's connected to. So the buildings would be next door to normal buildings, and there's no, you could be 1 minute in your lecture, the next minute you could be in the cinema, which is where the general public is. There's no real differentiation between university buildings and public buildings because they're all interconnected in a city-based campus. So sometimes students find that to be more fun, or sometimes students want to have a place where they can focus and then they can go out and think about everything else on the weekend. So that's actually one of our campuses on Warwick, as we're quite a large university, but it gives you an idea again of what it is you want to expect. So you have to kind of ask yourself a lot of questions. So the first one is me answering, what is the university experience? We all hold definitely a number of different pictures in our mind of what university is, what it's like, what it's going to be like, whether it's we've watched films, we've seen different music videos, or we've read different books, or just even watched videos on YouTube. It's all varies, but university and essentially what you're going to experience, it's all personalized, and it's based on our own development. It's based on our own developed understanding on what we hear and see. So university is different for everyone. And that's something you have to be aware of, that while you may have a friend who dislikes certain aspects, you might not dislike them until you really experience them. So it's just really where you can explore who you are currently and who you also want to become. I think one thing that you have to be aware of when it looks at student life, that you may be a shy person now, you may be someone who doesn't necessarily like to be quite extroverted, but you may find that depending on the university experience you expose yourself to, that can change. I noticed that most of my students do change from who they were when I first saw them at 16 or 17 years old to who they are when they graduate at 21, 22. So that's also something to be aware of. But it's pretty much common. We all have general common characteristics across all of the universities that you'd be looking at. So when it comes to a student life, the culture at pretty much all universities is going to be inquiry-based learning, which is something just to be aware of. So whether you're studying in England, Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland, you will be looking at inquiry-based learning. And that means learning where it's interactive, you're speaking back to your teachers, they're asking you questions, you're encouraged to research. And then a lot of the universities are research-led, which means that they have the ability to research at postgraduate levels into a number of different areas. And that also influences what students are taught, because they look at what the research is saying. So you always want to look, do you want a really practical technological university, which would be slightly different? And that all changes your student experience and how the life on campus is as well. But UK universities have an extensive use of technology and virtual learning environments as well. And one main thing that students don't realize is that life here is going to be involving a lot of independent study. So you're going to have to be developing your skills independently as well as in the classroom. So it's different to, let's say, a high school or some universities around the world, but you'd have all of the access to everything you need. So those are all just common characteristics. pretty much every institution will be the same in the UK, which can, I think, be sometimes different to other countries, like I mentioned. But then there are also a lot of common differences. So the main things which would be changing in your student life, depending where you study, would be your contact hours, which means the number of hours you have with your lecturers, which it varies by the course you study, the institution you study at, and then the level of study. So the contact hours you might have in your undergraduate degree would be different to a foundation degree. You may have more on foundation, less on undergraduate. Some may do it the other way around. Even your term and semester length, so how long you study, when you start your studies, and when your summer holiday is, when your Easter holiday is, that's all different with each university. And that again changes the type of student life you live. And then even the content, so what you're going to be studying, while the titles may be the same or similar, the actual content is different. So it's important that you're looking into that when it comes to student life, and then the methods as well. So all of this does affect your student life, because you would then be starting to tailor everything that you're doing academically alongside what you're doing in your free time and how you're exploring the UK, how you're integrating into the culture. That's all going to happen all at once. So you just have to have an idea of what you want to be doing, where you want to be studying in terms of location, and how open you want all of that to be. And then even the campus and the facilities, as the majority of a student's life is built up based on what the campus has to offer and what facilities it has, as that's how you realize who you are going forward and how you want to be spending your time. And even the rules and procedures will be different in each university. So you also have to think about, do the rules fit with the type of environments you're used to studying in? Do they fit with how you want to be living? As some universities can be a bit stricter in their rules and some are more relaxed. That again affects your mental health, your well-being, and how you feel about your integration into studying here, and whether you feel that you'd be comfortable to adapt to studying in the UK, wherever that is. But yeah, each university has its own culture that is developed often over many years, and each campus has its own feel. And that is a very true statement. So we always encourage students to either attend a summer school program or come for a campus visit, whichever university they go to, because every campus you go to, you will have a different feel and a different vibe. I know for myself, I went to 2 different campuses. One was actually in London and one was up north. They were both city-based campuses, but the second university I went to, as soon as I stepped onto the campus and into the city, I just knew that this is where I wanted to be and I was going to be happy. I wasn't happy when I stepped onto the first campus. So that's something that students don't realize, but it really does affect your life as a student. So when it comes on to that campus life, you really want to start looking at the sports clubs. What do they have there? Because these are going to be a big way for students to socialize and integrate with people. They're a really big way for you to build up with friends, and also to start building different skill sets, such as leadership skills, as you start to move up and become presidents of some of the clubs, or even with societies. You have interest group societies, you have subject-based societies. So students who study law can sometimes join law societies if their university has one. And if they do, that society will have its own trips and its own projects, and that helps build you up as you study. So look at the campus life of whichever university you're looking at. Get an idea of, does this campus life help build me into a better person? Because to be honest, you don't just go to university in the UK just to study. You want to be building yourself for when you finish your studies. So it's really important that you take as much as you can out of the experience and really experience that life as best as you can, because that will only help you moving forward. And you don't want to look back on it and wish you'd done more and wish you'd participated in more. And then every campus should have employment and volunteering opportunities. So again, look into what those look like. Do they look like real opportunities that will really build you up, or do they look like opportunities that are only there to help you make maybe a bit of money, but not necessarily build you towards your career? And then again, your students' union. So students' unions are really important for every university. Every university will have one. And this is essentially where students vote for who's going to be the presidents and who's going to be the officers for different things. And they have an influence on how the university runs in relation to students. And it's really important that you look at what the unions do, as each university union is also ranked as well. And there's the best union, and some of them aren't so well because they stand up for a student's right. So it's really important that you're aware of what the student union does and who's on it and how can you access it, because they also help international students a lot when they join universities. And then as part of the things that really change your student life, you'd be looking again at different aspects such as accommodations teams, welcome teams, residential life teams, the facilities on the campus. They're all going to be giving you an idea of student life. Do you have facilities, everything you need? Is it all on campus, or do you need to leave campus to access things? Because that also changes how you feel about your safety in some aspects, how you feel just about your support, your well-being, if everything is closer to you and just your opportunities. So that's a list of what we have at Warwick, but you'll be looking for universities to have similar, if not more. If they have less, then you'd want to ask yourself, oh, maybe why do they have less? These are all really important in integrating you into the student life. So I've kind of gone through and explained student life as a general and just things to look out for, but now you can actually see, and I'll play some videos so that you can see it from a student's perspective, because a visual representation is what's most important. So actually this is from our campus, and this is our piazza, and that's actually from one of the summers. And what you're seeing, the building in front, is the students' union, and students spend so much time just sitting there relaxing. But I'll play you a few videos now so you can get an idea of what it feels like and what it is to be a student. So a big thing is accommodation. So this is actually pictures of accommodation at the University of Warwick. So typically students would be having their own rooms wherever they're staying in most universities. Rarely would you find a university that would allow you to share a room in the UK. You'd have your own private room, and either you have a private bathroom or shared bathroom. And then you're in a flat system, so you have a living room and a kitchen, almost like an apartment. And then you've also got washing facilities, and all of this would be on campus. How easy accessible it is does depend on the type of institution you attend. But this is just an idea of what you're looking at. And I'll play you a video, and hopefully you should be able to hear this. Let me know if you can't. So this is one of our student accommodation halls of residence, and this gives you an idea of how it looks and how it should look in other universities. So that's just an example of one of the halls of residences that we have at Warwick, but it gives you an idea of how a campus-based university would look. And then you can also look at city-based universities. And as I said earlier, that a big thing for you to integrate into student life is having activities. How is your social life? going to look at. So you have a social life that you'll create with the friends you make, but then you also want to look at the individual social life you can create for yourself or continue. So if there are things that you already do at home, can you continue to do them when you move over to your undergraduate studies, whichever level that is? So here, this is again some of the things that Warwick has in their sports gym facility area. So this is all available around campus. So we have athletics tracks, football pitches, tennis courts, squash courts, badminton courts, climbing walls, swimming pools. Not every university has this. So that's what you want to look at what life do you want to live outside of your studies? How do you integrate? There is another video that should play just to give you an idea. Let me know if it doesn't. So that's just an example of what you'd be looking at for any type of university you look into. What type of facilities do they have? Try and watch as many videos, try and come on campus and see what they have to offer, as that all affects your student life. And then some of these are just shots of our campus to give an idea of how our student life varies to certain places. So as I said, we're a campus university, so we have these moments of where it'll be intense, where there's lots of other students, there's lots of activity, noise and fun going on, but then there's also places where there's just quiet and relaxation that students can find. So we have a mixture of essentially cultures that's going to be different to some institutions. So just to end all of this, because I have been talking a lot at VU, what I'd say the most important thing is to hear from how students say their experiences go. So unfortunately, I couldn't get one of my alumni because they're preparing for exams, but you can hear from some of our Warwick students and what they feel like student life is at Warwick and how they've integrated into it. So I'll just play this for you, and this will be the last one, and we can open up for a Q&A session just to see if there's areas that you want to know more about in terms of student life and then even culture. But I think it'll be the same thing when it comes to, you know, discussing Taiwanese culture. It's thousands of years of history. So the best thing is always to pick a few areas which are prominent in our culture, and then you can go and delve more and research more on those areas, like I said. So you'd be looking at music, food, films, sports. I think that's it. And history. If you look at those areas, you'll get yourself a good idea of what it is in our culture, and then it makes it easier for you to integrate. So I'll just play this, and then this will be our last video.
Being an outdoorsy person, I love being at uni where there's loads of green spaces and places to just relax with your friends, and I love running around the uni because there's loads of wildlife and it's just beautiful. So one of the best things about living in halls is the amount of independence you get. At university, you have to cook, and this can be quite a big process, especially in first term. The best thing about the arts at university is how much there is going on. Whether you want to rehearse or go see a professional show in the Arts Centre or go support some student societies, whether it be comedy or dance or theatre, there's always something to see and always something to get involved in.
University is more than just achieving a degree, and sport is such a good way of getting involved and staying fit and making new friends. And I've been playing sports since my first year, really increased in my confidence and developed so many skills like people skills, leadership skills, and yeah, I would just recommend it to anyone.
So one of the biggest challenges I faced when starting university was the independent study, but it's actually quickly become one of my favourite things about life at university.
I think definitely my favorite part about the student life has been just the ability to meet new people from all over the world and just being able to grow from their experiences, because you spend 17 years in one school and then suddenly you enter university and there's so many different ideas going around that you can't help but be excited of figuring out what's out there for you.
One of my favourite things about my degree so far has definitely been labs. Obviously you learn certain topics during your lectures, and then it's really nice to go into the labs and reinforce those concepts that you've just been taught.
My favorite thing about student life is that it helped me grow as a person, both academically by finding the thing I love, politics, and socially by meeting very good friends. University has helped me prepare for the future by giving me the tools to discover new career opportunities that I didn't think about before.
So my student experience has really been built around the Students' Union, actually. It's a really creative space, and some of the best moments I've had have been from going up to a stall in the SU and signing up for something and not quite knowing what's going to happen, but then doing something amazing that really surprised me, whether that's charity, whether that's career related, or whether that's just a fun society event. It's really been a kind of pillar on which my undergraduate experience has been built around.
My one piece of advice would just be to grab every single opportunity that you possibly can. I've made the most of my time here by studying abroad, being an exec member of a sports club, and also studying modules outside of my department, and that's really made my time here.
So those are just examples when it comes to Warwick, but for any university you look at those types of examples for the student life. Does the university give you those options? What does it really provide their students? And then that would be the best thing in helping you create a future that you really want to have. So I would definitely recommend that for all students. So I would say that's it for now for the session in terms of the information that I have, but there's always room for discussion with the Q&A. I think the one takeaway is for everything, it's just all more complex than we think in some cases. So the best thing to do is just go and do your research. Like I said, attend a pre-university summer school if you want to. That gives you time on campus. You can feel what it's like to be a student before you've actually had to join your undergrad, depending on how old you are. Pretty much most universities have some form of a summer school. I know we at Warwick do have a version. So if you're not yet at the age of going to university, you can come from the age of 15 for the summer school, and then you see what you want. But yeah, those are all just ways of experiencing student life. And hopefully I've given you a small insight into what to think about, and you've hopefully learned something new as well about what student life is like, and also what British culture and what the UK is like as well.
大家好，刚刚贝尔讲那个特别介绍英国的一些有关于它的文化，还有它的历史，那还有关于 Warwick 学校的一个学生的生活，其实也让我想到我大概是20几年前过去的，当时其实学校的设备没有这么好哈。现在看到说，它的 Sports Center 那些很高级的一些健身设备，还有攀岩啊，还有就是学生的宿舍，其实也可以像住套房。那其实如果可以成为Warwick 学生，如果说我现在过去，我会觉得我现在很幸福，不会像以前的时候，我记得是学校其实就是20多年前，学校设备其实还没有这么好。那现在 Warwick 其实它是一个算是非常资源非常丰富的学校，所以有机会的话，我想大家如果想要去英国留学，我觉得 Warwick 是一个不错的选择。那我这边稍微介绍一下那个为什么要到英国去，可以分享一下。 me see, yeah. 看得到吗？
可以。
OK， 好，基本上那个学校来讲的话，就是应该是说大家为什么要去选英国？那刚刚贝贝有特别去讲了一下，就是有关于它的文化方面。那我觉得最重要就是就是英国政府很重视它的教育品质，其实它的教育是全球认可的。那他们其实每年都会有一些固定的那个审核的教育机构去审核他们学校的，不管是教学上或者是他研究上的一些评鉴。那如果是没有达到标准的，其实他们是不可以去招收国际学生。所以如果你会发现到说英国签证是跟学校绑在一起的，如果这些学校没有达到那个招收国际学生的标准的话，他们是不会给予发学生的签证。所以到英国呢，其实它的那个教育品质是，我想就是可以算是做一个保证。那尤其是在学术的发展，因为像我们刚刚有提到说，英国人口是6500万，那实际上占全球人口总数只有1%，可是它的研究呢，大概占了全世界就是它的研究发表的量占了全世界大概14%以上，所以它在学术研究这一方面是非常优秀的。那另外就是它的教学的方式可能跟我们台湾不一样，它是比较算是启发性的教学。那其实这一套方式像我接触到20几年，接触到那个从英国毕业回来校友，我觉得他们在启发上，就是他所学到的这一套是可以应用在他的工作上，甚至生活的适应能力上面。对，所以这个是我觉得是一个还蛮重要的一个去英国所学的。那英国另外一个好处是它的大学是3年制，那硕士是1年制，所以相对上会比我们台湾稍微就是短了1年。可是有些学生可能会认为说，我修业年限这么短，是不是学的比较少？实际上不尽然哈，因为像他硕士1年的话，实际上他是把美国的2年的课程缩成1年，所以很多学生过去之后，其实那1年会非常非常辛苦。而且那1年还要再写论文，那写论文我觉得这个也是一个非常蛮重要的一个训练。对，所以就算说他1年训练回来，只要他在那1年很用功很把握的话，我相信他可以进步很多。而且我们有校友说，这个大概是他一辈子以来最辛苦最用功的1年，因为如果不用功的话，真的是就是没办法把学位完成。对，那另外我们刚刚讲他的修业年限比较短，所以相对上他的投资报酬率就会比较多，等于说他所付的生活费或者是学费的话，其实不会像美国一些私立的学校花那么多。那在这边给大家一个预估，如果说你不是选伦敦的学校，因为伦敦的话可能就是会烧生活费非常非常特别贵，其他区域的学校我觉得学费加生活费可能是大概可能介于120万到200万之间，因为要看你的那个课程，尤其是商学课程或是 MBA 可能要超过200万，可是一般的课程大概150万，就是学费加生活费其实就够了。那伦敦的话可能会建议至少要200万以上，所以这个算是我觉得是蛮值得投资的啦。那另外一个好处就是您在申请的时候，它的那个申请文件其实不会太难，不会像美国要求的东西会那么多。像尤其是硕士的话，它不用大部分的课程不用考 GRE 或者是 GMAT。对，就是会看你的毕业证书成绩单，还有雅思的成绩，就是英文的检定证明，还有你的在校成绩。那你自己要准备一些写 personal statement， 就是为什么要过去念英国，为什么要出国留学，然后为什么要特别去申请这样子的一个课程。对，就要写一个有关于你自己的履历表跟你的 personal statement。对，那所以它的文件并没有想象中这么困难，所以也很鼓励，就是大家如果想要出国留学的话，我想英国是一个非常非常好的地方。 另外我这边没有提的话，我觉得是治安上我必须老实说可能比台湾稍微差一点，对，因为台湾治安是真的很好，可是英国来讲相对跟美国来讲，我觉得因为它枪是不能一般人拥有的，所以如果跟美国比较的话，可能它的那个治安方面会稍微好一点点。对，那我的分享就到这边，谢谢。